31 years ago, I planted my first kitchen garden exactly the way every book said to. Rows at ground level, everything in the soil the way it had always been done. By 62, I could barely finish a Saturday morning without my back deciding it was done for the day. I nearly quit. What I hadn't figured out yet was that my garden wasn't the problem. The way I'd set it up was. Here are the 7 mistakes that cost me the most, and what finally fixed each one. What part of your body gave out on you first? Back, knees, or something else? Drop it in the comments. I read every one. The first mistake is the one I'm most embarrassed to admit, because the answer had been sitting in front of me for 3 decades. I assumed, without ever stopping to question it, that a garden lived at ground level. Every bed I built was at ground level. Every container I owned sat directly on the soil. Every single task in my growing calendar involved going down, kneeling, crouching, bending over, and then coming back up slowly and with some amount of negotiation. That was just gardening, as far as I understood it. Nobody told me otherwise, and I never thought to ask. What I didn't figure out until I was past 60 is that a plant doesn't have an opinion about how high off the ground it is. It doesn't know if the soil is 6 inches up or 3 feet up. You are the one who knows the difference. The moment I raised my main containers to waist height, the herbs, the strawberries, the compact greens I was growing for the kitchen, the whole calculation changed. I wasn't compensating for a bad position anymore. I was just gardening. Standing up, reaching in, standing back up. 30 years to figure that out. I'm not proud of the number, but there it is. The second mistake was spreading my herbs across too many different spots in the yard. Thyme along the fence, chives at the back step, lemon balm out near the center bed where I kept losing track of it. Every time I needed something for the kitchen, I was doing laps. And because each plant was in a different location at a different height, every harvest required a different position. Lean left for the thyme, kneel down for the pot by the step, dig through the far bed for the lemon balm I could never find on the first pass. In 2019, I pulled everything out and consolidated what I actually cook with into one long container at table height. Chives, thyme, sage, sorrel, and mint in its own dedicated pot right next to it, because mint will push out everything else if you let it share. I reach in once, I clip what I need, I'm back inside in 90 seconds. Everything is at the same height. Everything is in the same place. I have not done herb laps since that spring, and I am not going back. The third mistake was strawberries in ground rows, and I made it for 20 years straight. Traditional low bed, straw mulch underneath, runners spreading out across the soil in every direction, the full classic setup my father used and his before him. Every June, that meant going down on my hands and knees to push through the foliage looking for ripe fruit, finding berries I'd missed that had been sitting on damp ground for 2 days, coming back inside with dirty knees and a lower back that wasn't being particularly diplomatic about the whole experience. In 2017, I moved everything to a container at hip height set on a simple wooden stand I built in an afternoon. The berries hang at eye level. I can see every single one of them from where I'm standing. I pick the whole harvest in 10 minutes without bending once. I switched to an ever-bearing variety at the same time, which gives me 2 flushes of fruit, one in June, one in September, from a setup that comes back each spring without me doing a thing between seasons. I should have made that change 15 years earlier. The only thing that stopped me was the assumption that this was simply how strawberries were done. But the mistake that cost me more cumulative hours than all of these combined, I didn't even see it until I sat down one winter and did the actual math. I'll come back to it before we're done. The fourth mistake was indeterminate tomatoes in ground cages, and I made it for most of my gardening life. Every 2 or 3 days from July through September, check the cage, tie new growth to the support, find the stems that flopped sideways overnight, crouch down to locate fruit that ripened low where you couldn't easily see it. A dozen plants is a part-time job in a position no back over 55 is going to thank you for, and mine let me know about it in increasingly specific terms starting around 2009. What I do now, determinate varieties in containers at waist height. The plants stay compact, they set fruit all at once without needing constant management, and I pick standing up. If you're genuinely attached to an indeterminate variety, and some of them are hard to give up on flavor, grow one plant on a tall trellis and train it to climb straight up rather than out. You harvest from shoulder height. Your back stops being part of the conversation, and that changes everything about whether you're still enjoying it come mid-August. If you've already changed at least one thing in your garden because of what your body started telling you, write the word changed in the comments. Helps the video more than you'd think. The fifth mistake was buying equipment to cope with the bending instead of just eliminating the bending. Between 2005 and 2015, I spent real money on a foam kneeling pad, a long-handled weeder, a telescoping harvester, a rolling garden stool, and a back support brace I wore for about a week before it went into a closet. Every single piece was designed to make a difficult position slightly more survivable. Not one of them was designed to make that position unnecessary. I kept the setup wrong and kept buying better tools for managing the wrong setup. The garden was still at the wrong height. I was still doing the same tasks in the same bad posture. I just had better accessories for being in the wrong place. When I finally changed the actual height of the growing setup, I gave almost all of that equipment away to a neighbor who hadn't figured it out yet either. A garden arranged properly for your body doesn't need accessories to compensate for what it is. The right setup is the only tool that actually matters. Everything else is just a more expensive way of not solving the problem. The sixth mistake was treating perennials as a bonus instead of building around them from the start. For most of my gardening life, annuals were the whole plan, and anything that came back on its own was a pleasant surprise, which meant every single April I was digging, turning, amending, and starting over. My lower back formed a clear and increasingly vocal opinion about that particular ritual starting in my mid-50s. The shift that mattered most was deciding to build the whole system around plants that don't ask you to start over. Chives, thyme, sorrel, strawberries, lemon balm. One afternoon to set the container up correctly the first time, and after that the job is to show up and harvest. No digging, no annual soil prep in a position your body stopped tolerating. The effort is entirely front-loaded and the return compounds every season that follows. By year 3, what you planted in an afternoon is producing more reliably than any bed you spent a whole weekend rebuilding. That should have been my foundation 20 years before it was. Everything I use now, the heights, the varieties, which perennials actually earn their space and which ones disappoint, I've put it all in a short guide. Links in the description if you want it in one place. And the last mistake is the only one I could actually measure. Because one winter I went back through my gardening logs. I've kept them since 1991, and counted the time I spent not growing anything, just moving, walking between beds at opposite ends of the yard, going back to the shed for a tool I'd left somewhere, hauling water to the far corner where the hose didn't quite reach, making 3 separate trips across the property in a single 40-minute session when one organized trip would have handled all of it. I averaged 6 hours a week over a 20-week season not gardening, just covering ground. I will not say what that adds up to over 30 years. The number is too discouraging to read out loud. The fix was almost insultingly simple. Everything I grow now is within 15 feet of where I stand on Saturday morning. One compact corner, everything within reach, nothing scattered to the far ends of the property. The garden that requires the least travel is the garden you actually keep tending as the years add up, not because you get more disciplined, but because it stops punishing you for showing up. 3 decades of doing it the hard way taught me exactly one thing worth passing on. The problem was almost never the plant. It was almost always the setup. Change the height, shrink the footprint, build around what comes back on its own, and the plants handle everything else from there. Next video, I'm going into the one watering mistake that kills container perennials over winter before they ever get a chance to come back in spring. If you've lost a plant you were counting on, that one is for you. Real gardening, real bodies, for people who aren't finished yet.